Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome to today's session on 5 questions that yes, you need to ask every lead generation provider that you are thinking about working with. Welcome to this session. My name is Tyler Lessard from the Technology Advice team. I'll introduce myself a bit more in just a few moments. But first, I wanted to ask all of you, where are you coming in from? Get those fingers typing, hop on into the chat. Let me know where you are tuning in from. And I'd also love to get to know a little bit more about what role you are in your organization, so I can make sure that we tailor some of the content specifically to what you might be facing as, I don't know, maybe you're a demand gen or lead generation manager. Maybe you're a digital marketing manager or a performance marketing manager. Let me know in the chat where you're coming from, what your role is, and we will hop into the content in just a couple of moments. All right, great to see you here, Caitlin. Actually, we got a ton of folks here. Thanks everybody for joining. Hello, Jonathan. Todd's here. Oh, Shelby's here. We've got Carrie Mertz. Carrie, welcome to the show. Alexandra, great to see you here. Lots of folks rolling in from across North America. If anybody's coming from international, let me know. But thanks to see you all here today. Now, before we hop into it, just some quick housekeeping items. Yes, we will provide a copy of the recorded version of the webinar after the session, so keep an eye out for that in your inbox. We have a handout available that you can grab at any time, and I'll mention that at the end of the session as well. It's got a bunch of questions that you can use when evaluating your next lead gen provider. And I also want to emphasize that please be active in the chat. I love to feel your text energy while I'm presenting here today. Let me know if there's something that really resonates. If you have a question, a comment, just drop it into the chat. If you do have an important question that you want us to get to at the end, please put that in the Q&A section as well. I'll hop over there after the content and we can answer any of those big questions that come in from all of you here today. So without further ado, let's hop into today's topic on 5 questions that you need to ask every lead gen provider. Now, a little bit more about myself. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at Technology Advice, and I joined the business about 6 months ago at the start of this year. Now, prior to that, I've spent 15 plus years as a B2B marketer and marketing leader, and I'm sure like many of you have spent countless hours working on different lead generation, demand gen programs, working with lots of different types of partners, all who promise me the most amazing, high quality, awesome leads that are definitely going to convert into pipeline. And of course, sometimes it happens, more often it doesn't. And in my role as a marketer prior to Technology Advice, honestly, I realize in hindsight that I didn't always know the right questions to ask when I was thinking about a new partner, about what would separate somebody from being somebody I could expect high quality from versus a vendor who was just hoping to get me high quantity of leads as quickly as they could so they could move on to their next customer. And I'm sure I've worked with both types and over those years, but I wish I had known then what I know now in being here at Technology Advice, an actual provider of lead gen programs. So I wanted to share with you all some of the things that I've learned now that I'm behind the scenes a little bit. I'm learning more about how the industry really operates, who the different types of vendors out there are, and what separates those who are really focused on quality and driving revenue outcomes from, well, a lot of those vendors out there who are just focused on hitting lead quantity goals. So you're going to walk away with a number of tips, ideas, and most importantly, 5 key questions that you should be asking any lead gen vendor that you work with. So let's hop right into it. And I want to start by summarizing a little bit of what I've learned about why and how most of us work with lead generation providers. And I've spent the last 6 months talking to a lot of different marketers, customers of ours, friends in the ecosystem to really understand, why do marketers like you, marketers like me, actually work with lead gen vendors? What are our goals? And it seems pretty simple and obvious, but I actually have gotten lots of different answers from people and have realized there are lots of different situations where working with lead gen vendors can really help a marketing team. And if you have an answer to this question, drop it in the chat. I'd love to know, as you're thinking about working with lead gen vendors, or maybe you have in the past, what were your goals in doing so? Was there a specific reason that you decided to work with a lead gen provider rather than perhaps try to run those programs yourself, or use some other type of means to get lead flow going? Well, what I've learned, a handful of things that I've seen as the most common answers to that question. First, no surprise, many of us work with lead gen vendors to scale our lead generation efforts. So we've realized we can only get so far with the team that we have and the channels that we own, that we need to scale those efforts to hit our targets. And we look to work with a partner who can help us reach new audiences and help to, again, scale those efforts. The second thing is I've found lots of folks who often work with lead gen providers to top up their lead flow during slower periods of their own marketing programs and campaigns. So as opposed to just consistently using one to help you hit scale, they're looking at those times when perhaps their own investments are lower, maybe they don't have a big event happening, and they need a partner to help them surge, but they don't want to hire the in-house resources necessarily because it's not something they're going to need year round. The third is actually reaching new audiences that they don't currently have access to. And this is a really interesting one when you think about, as a marketing team, you have your marketing database, you have your channels, there's probably a certain audience you're comfortable reaching today, but perhaps you're launching a new solution. Maybe you're trying to run some surge programs into a specific geography or industry. Lead generation partners often help out with that, where they can tap into their audiences to help you reach new ones that traditionally you haven't had access to. Associated with that, the next one that I hear from marketers is that they will use it to try to, again, help surge or drive activity in perhaps new markets, new segments, new product categories that they're trying to reach into, maybe sometimes even as a test. And so I know that some of us, when we're launching a new product, we don't yet have the right audience that we want to target for it. Maybe we're not even sure of what the right messaging is. So sometimes they'll work with a lead gen partner who has that audience available to them, and we'll run some different marketing programs to see what works, what doesn't, get some initial lead flow going before they invest in building up their own lists. And one of the other important things, which I've heard from a number of folks, is that they just don't have the expertise in-house to be running really targeted, well-oiled lead generation programs. And they look for partners who have specific areas of expertise that can bring those capabilities, because that's what they do on a day-to-day basis, and ensure that they're running programs on their behalf that generate higher quality than what they could in their own team. Now, the last one is one that a lot of marketers, I think, also do, but are often ashamed to admit it, which is working with lead gen providers to just hit my quarterly lead volume goals. And I've been there, guilty as charged, right? We're looking at that lead target for the quarter, and we've got to bring in 5,000 leads to feed the sales team. We're only at 3,000 right now with 3 weeks to go. So let's run a quick program with a partner, get another 2,000 leads in the door, brush our hands, and hey, we hit our target. But of course, we all know that's super dangerous, right? When we are working with partners to just try to hit volume goals, that's when we start to sacrifice quality. And that's when we start to forget about our real purpose, which is to drive pipeline and revenue, not just hit those lead volume targets. But of course, that happens out there quite frequently in the market. And I actually have a quick video to show you all to bring that idea to life. It's something that I always remember. It was a TV commercial, actually, that the Adobe team launched 10 years ago. Actually, I couldn't even find a 1080p version of it. It's so old. But I wanted to play this as a good just sort of representation of, well, it's something that many of us marketers can unfortunately associate with a bit too much here. Let's check this one out.
I need some clicks.
Okay. I got some choice clicks right here, yo. Impressions, page views, followers.
Are they pure?
Man, I don't cut with bots.
How about likes? You got some likes?
Well, this is a high-class operation.
Come on. Everybody's doing it. I got my whole Q4 budget right here.
Whoa. Easy.
I just need enough to get me through this quarter.
Turn to the right.
Clicks. You were buying clicks. What will I tell the children?
All right. So hopefully that maybe gave you a bit of a laugh. Maybe, again, it was too relatable for situations where you're like, I just need to go out and hit these numbers. But again, the reality is all of us are faced with this sometimes, and it can often lead us to find challenging vendors who might not be giving us the kinds of results we're looking for. All right. So what is it that we're really looking for beyond just clicks? I love that. By the way, my favorite line is, I don't cut with bots. So good. So what are we actually typically looking for before we hop into like how to really figure out who to work with? Of course, you want to be mindful of like, what are you really looking for from a lead gen vendor when you start working with them? What is your expectation on the other side of it? And the first ones I have on the screen here, these are all standard, right? These are all the things we would all think about every day. When we work with a lead gen vendor, we are expecting contact information or a list from them at the end of the campaign for, I put qualified leads in quotes because they aren't always qualified, but that's what we're hoping for. And leads who, number one, match our targeting criteria or our ICP that we're going after. So we're expecting leads that match this certain targeting profile, that those leads have had some type of exposure to our brand or perhaps have downloaded a piece of our content. And finally, that they've opted in for follow-up communications from us as a partner vendor. So those are the most common typical things any lead gen provider you're working with, you're going to be looking for. But there are some other things that you may want to look for as well as you go a little bit deeper and try to improve what we think about as quality. Number one, we're often looking for leads who have met additional qualification criteria. So not just that they're in my ICP and maybe they downloaded a guide, but perhaps I also want to qualify that, they're currently using a certain product or they have budget for a certain thing. So additional qualification criteria can help us get higher quality. Folks who have demonstrated intent to purchase. So can a lead gen provider give me leads that have demonstrated some type of interest in buying or showing some indications of what we call bottom of funnel activity? We also love it if we can get leads who are part of a specific account list or, again, are with a company who is in that sort of best fit targeting for us. So not just the right role, but also the right company. And finally, it's also great if we can get leads who haven't just had one touch with our brand, but have multiple touches throughout a journey so that they not only have some familiarity, but also additional kind of brand affinity and brand trust with us. So this is what I think about. And frankly, in many years of marketing, I really only thought about the top couple. But as I worked with more folks in the industry, I've realized these are all really important things to be thinking about. Now, the way that lead gen providers are going to get us this, right? Again, many of you have been running these programs. You likely know some of these fundamentals, but it's important to really think about this in terms of the different ways that a partner is working. So in order to get us those leads who have opted in and who are showing some of those qualification criteria, many vendors will do content syndication. And many of you are familiar with this, sharing content assets, largely as a way to, well, both educate the audience on a key topic and get your brand associated with it, but also as a way to get them to opt in to receive follow-up communications. And having a gated content asset is often a very effective way to do that. Sometimes they will push out ads or offers and promotions through different channels that will drive to some kind of conversion point that, again, is either geared towards getting that individual to opt in or to show some other type of interest or intent. They might be doing contact data verification, where they are, again, taking lists either that they're developing or that they're acquiring, doing verification on contact details, ensuring those folks are in your ICP, and then perhaps pairing it up with one of these other types of initiatives. And they might also be doing things like surveys or questionnaires, again, as ways to pre-qualify a potential lead, to add in additional qualifiers to ensure it's just the right person to be sending over to their customer. And those can be really impactful, but those also are difficult to scale in a lot of cases. But these are some of the different tactics lead gen vendors use behind the scenes to do all those things we just talked about, right? Get those engagements, get that opt-in, and get a lead that's ready to be sent over to their customers. And while these tactics are pretty consistent from vendor to vendor, what I've learned very much over the last few months is that the approach that different lead gen vendors take and the resulting quality of the leads, and by quality, I mean, are they likely to convert into a meeting, into an opportunity, and into revenue, can vary drastically. And two vendors who use these same tactics can generate very different types of lead lists for customers. Let me give you an example, a tale of two different demand gen vendors. And you may have worked with both of these at some time, and you can think about, oh, I recognize that, and I recognize that. So what I mean by this is think about, so vendor number one is a company who is a media publisher. and they've built their own audience of engaged followers and folks who are actively reading content on their sites. They built a trusted relationship with this audience of professionals who, again, you as a vendor want to try to target. Now, they have a large editorial staff. They have subject matter experts. They may have influencers, all who are actively building these relationships and creating trust with this audience, such that when they do promote third-party products or share content or push ads, they're going into an audience who's already engaged, who already trusts it, and are engaging with those through that lens of, oh, this is coming to me through a trusted partner that I've been working with. A vendor who attracts both what top of funnel and bottom of funnel audiences because they publish lots of different types of content and allows them to sort of understand the lay of the land and bring in different types of leads. A vendor who reaches those audiences on multiple channels, and it's not just email blasts, maybe media sites, and maybe social media channels, and maybe video, maybe newsletters, maybe phone calls, lots of different ways. And finally, as a result of having this audience, having this high engagement, they're getting first-party insights to understand who's leaning into what, who might be qualified, who should we be sending these out to, and using that as insights to drive their lead gen programs. So that's one type of vendor. On the other side, you've got a company who is what I consider to be a database marketer, right? They've aggregated a big list of names, have created subsegments of different types of ICPs, but they've generally created that list by either acquiring contact data, aggregating it from other third-party providers. They typically then employ outbound email and cold calling against that list, very similar to how you as a marketing team could address that database. They're focused on high volume to try to hit their numbers, and they really focus on hitting lead volume goals by doing a large amount of outbound into these audiences, finding somebody who shows some level of interest, and then adding some additional qualification data, perhaps adding in third-party intent data to then say, yep, they're qualified and they're showing high intent. I'm going to pass that over as a lead. But in reality, they often don't have the level of insights. They don't have the level of trust with that audience, such that those are actually memorable brand moments. And of course, in many cases, those leads aren't going to be as high quality. So this gives you sort of two spectrums, lenses to look at. And again, I know looking back in hindsight, I've worked with vendors in both camps, and there's a full continuum in the middle of this, right? There's vendors who are on one extreme, on the other, and everything in between. And you'll find, of course, certain ones have lower cost per lead, certain ones have higher, but the expectations in terms of quality and conversion are going to be very different. Does that make sense? Hopefully that gives you sort of a lens of like, oh yeah, and you can start to pick out and be like, I know what you mean. On the far side of the equation are, those people who hit your inbox and they're like, you want to buy a lead list? Kind of like in that Adobe video we just watched. Yeah, you know it. Okay, so let's hop into it. 5 questions to ask to figure out if a vendor is from column 1, from column 2, or somewhere in between. And these are really important questions and frameworks to help you get to the root of how does a vendor really work behind the scenes? What kind of relationships do they have with the audience they're targeting? And what can I expect in terms of quality of leads coming from them? And how that might be reflected in the programs that I choose to work with them on. Okay, the first question, super important. As sort of teased in that last example, you want to ask any lead gen vendor you're going to work with, do they own their own audience? And if they do, because most of them will say, oh, yes. How can you validate that and better understand, well, what does that really mean? Is the audience that you're going to be marketing to generate leads for me, is that an audience that you've organically grown over time through thought leadership, through your own editorial, through trusted content, maybe through social media? Is it an audience that has a brand affinity and connection to you? Are they highly engaged? And if so, well, I'm more likely to see results and success through programs there. Again, if they do have owned properties, are they reputable? Or again, is their audience really just a database, a list of contacts that they're emailing and phoning? If they do say they have their own audience, can you become a member of that audience, right? So you can start to dig and go, okay, sounds great. Can I become a member? Like, do you have certain media sites where people are coming to? If so, can you point me at those? Are they engaging with your newsletters? If so, can I sign up for that? Do you run ads in certain places? If so, can I see that? Can you put me over there and I'm going to hang out there for a little while to see what the experience is like? Now, this is, again, you're going to find a spectrum of answers from different vendors. So again, what's most important is that you can do your own additional due diligence to validate what that audience is and whether they're the kind of people that you're going to want to go after, and do they have a positive brand relationship with that company. Now, as I alluded to, just because they say, yes, we have an audience, yes, we've got a bunch of media sites where they frequent, don't always take their word for it. This is a company that I found on LinkedIn. I'm not here to call anybody out, but this is an example of the kinds of things you need to look for. If you look at this content syndication, ABM vendors LinkedIn profile, they sound great. Like, they talk all about their ability to create B2B demand gen programs for these specific audiences. And then they list down on the right-hand side here, our network of published sites allow us to get relevant content delivery to your audience. And they list out their websites. And I'm like, great, they've got a great audience. ittech-news.com, cxoinsiders.com. These sound like amazing websites. Well, guess what? If you actually research those sites, well, I did, no surprise. And this is what we found. Well, each of those properties gets less than 5,000 views per month, which is, I think, the lowest number that it can go. So it could be 1, it could be 500, I don't know. So they get minimal traffic. About 80% of that traffic is from India, and it is 100% of that traffic is from desktops. So it's pretty quick to see that these sites are really just fronts, right? Like, there isn't any audience really actively engaging with them. The fact that all of the traffic is from desktop is a red flag. And again, if you're targeting people in India, that's great. But if you're not, this doesn't seem like the right kind of partner to work with. So again, this is where it gets really tricky, because vendors aren't always super transparent, and they represent things like this as a way to showcase that we have a great audience. But if you dig in, sometimes it's not real. Again, I don't want to call one out or the other. I just want to arm you with things to be looking for and real examples of how this stuff plays out in real life. Okay, number 2, how do they actually reach the audience that they're going after for you as a lead gen partner? So whether they have media sites, newsletters, social media followings, or a marketing database where they're doing email and phone, how do they actually reach the audience? And how can they reach the audience for you as a lead gen partner? Are they able to reach them on multiple channels? Are they able to use multiple different formats? Or is it just emails with a link to download a piece of content? And if it is, that might be fine, but you want to understand that going into it so that you can level set your expectations accordingly. Do they have a team who's doing teledemand and are making phone calls into potential leads to either do further qualification, maybe BANT level qualification, or maybe to do contact data verification? Do they have newsletters? Do they have YouTube channels, right? All of these are different ways they could be engaging audiences. And I'm not going to say one channel is better than another, but in many cases, if a company is able to offer a mix of channels, it's going to give you better opportunities to reach different types of audiences with different types of messages and help that accelerate your lead gen programs. As you dig into this and understand how they reach them, just like in the previous one, don't be shy to keep digging. Ask those questions. Can I see real examples of how that manifests for your customers, or companies like ours who are trying to generate leads from you? Where, if you do have a newsletter, can I sign up for it? If you do have YouTube channels that audiences are engaging on, can you share the link so I can check them out for myself? So these are all things that, again, you want to be thinking about, and use the lens of these answers to think about how you're going to work with that partner. As a reference example, I'm not trying to pitch you specifically on technology advice, but I want to give you a reference example for how a company like TA actually engages audiences on different channels. So in our case, we have 30 plus different tech media sites that we own and operate, where audiences are coming, reading articles, downloading content, engaging with us on a daily basis. We have newsletters and email sends that we do to subscribed lists of folks who are very specific lists. We have our cybersecurity newsletter. We have our project management newsletter. They're very segmented to ensure that we can build an audience in a certain area and reach them with targeted messages. We operate a number of social media and YouTube channels connected to those broader brands that we have. We have phone conversations. We do direct content syndication. So as you can see, a vendor like Technology Advice has the multi-channel approach, which allows them to then reach different types of audiences in different ways, and potentially also reach different stakeholders in different accounts, depending on whether they're, again, more likely to be on YouTube, on media sites, subscribing to newsletters, and so on. So again, this is a reference example as you think about other vendors that you work with. You want to ask these questions and understand what kinds of things are you doing. The third thing that you want to dig into is understanding how a lead gen vendor targets and qualifies the leads that they are working for you. Now, we all know that any lead gen vendor that you work with should be able to target leads based on basic ICP information, demographics and firmographics. I want to target people at this certain level, maybe it's manager and above, in this industry, at companies in this size range. Those are the table stakes that, of course, any vendor should be able to use for targeting. And, of course, the leads they're generating for you should always match those targeting criteria. But you also want to think about and understand how exactly are they qualifying that that person is ready to be sent over as a lead to you? Is it purely based on an opt-in to download your content? Maybe you're just doing content syndication. It's a single opt-in to get your content. And again, if so, that might be fine, but you want to understand that. Are there additional layers of qualification that those vendors can add in that might add value to you? So for example, if you are doing content syndication, you may be able to ask for additional qualifying questions to be added to the form. So in addition to entering your name, phone number, and so on, there might be a additional question asking, again, perhaps it's you only sell to companies who use Salesforce. Maybe you're a sales tech company. And so you want to ask a question, does your company currently use Salesforce as its CRM? And if anybody answers no to that question, they're not going to be sent to you as a lead. So those are going to end up being a little bit more costly to run because they have to promote it more to find enough people who answer yes to that question, but the quality might end up being a lot better. So there are things like that that you want to look out for. Do they have the ability to add additional qualifiers if that's important to you? Also, are they able to narrow down the targeting beyond just demographics and firmographics and qualifying questions to focus on specific types of leads who may be more down funnel, if you will? Those who are showing higher intent to actually be making a purchase decision. Are you going to be getting really top of funnel leads who are just showing interest in certain content? Or are you also able to focus on leads who perhaps are downloading very bottom of funnel type content? Or perhaps they're leads who they know have been showing intent because they've been reviewing product review pages for a certain category. Or perhaps they've been frequenting comparison charts for different vendors. Right? Those are the types of bottom of funnel signals that can help a lead gen vendor understand this lead seems to be actively in market. And so I want to prioritize getting them over to my customer because they're going to have a much higher chance at converting into pipeline. So these are all the things, again, you want to be thinking about. There's stuff we think about for our own marketing programs, but often when we run things with partners, we sometimes forget about going to that level of depth. Or maybe we just assume they can only do really top of funnel lead gen for us. But these are all things to be thinking about, and understanding if a partner can do these are important. And then you can make a decision on, why you might work with one partner or another. If they're not able to add in meaningful intent signals or bottom of funnel indicators, again, that might be fine. But you'll want to think about what you're willing to spend for a lead for somebody who's very top of funnel versus those that are showing more intent. And this last point here is a subtle one, but I think somewhat important, which is just this idea of, are they like capturing in market demand, or are they manufacturing demand from their audience? And not just demand, but demand data. So what I mean by that is, again, are they finding the people who are actually looking to buy and converting them as a lead? Or are they finding people who they just happen to have in their list and then figuring out the kinds of things to qualify them against to make it look like they have demand so they can hit your targeting thresholds. It's a very subtle thing, and it's hard to know before you work with a vendor, what are they really doing? But some of these questions are going to help you get a sense for that. Fourth question, and one more to go, is understanding how does that lead gen vendor partner with their customers, with you, somebody working with them. Now, this one is really, really important. And all of you know, if you've worked with these, service partners, agencies, and so on, how they actually partner with you as an extension to your team, their level of transparency, collaboration can make or break a partnership. And I've seen lots of lead gen vendors who aren't good at this. They're not built in a collaborative partnership model. Some are very much built to, come up with a campaign plan with you based on your targeting criteria. They go into a black box. They send you back a list of 100 leads 2 weeks later. You pay your bill and they move on. And maybe a bunch of those leads weren't a great fit, but they're already moved on. Whereas other vendors are the opposite, right? They're very transparent throughout the process. They'll answer all of these questions very honestly that we talked about here. They'll share really specific details on how a lead was generated. And if you need to know this lead downloaded this asset on this date at this time from this site, they should be able to get you that information. And those things are important to make sure that you're able to follow up with those leads effectively. If they're not seeing success, if maybe they are trying to syndicate a piece of your content and they're just not getting a lot of downloads, right? Some companies will hide that and they'll just like somehow sort of stuff your list with other people and send it over. Whereas better companies will actually be transparent in that. And they might say like, look, this just isn't resonating. We're finding that people aren't engaging with it. So let's partner together to maybe find a new asset to promote. Maybe we can help you create one or whatever it happens to be. Are they open to pivoting on targeting criteria, right? Again, you can ask this ahead of time or you'll learn throughout the process. If I'm working with a vendor, maybe we're trying to get 500 leads generated. Are they pausing every 50 to 100 leads, or maybe even less than that, to make sure the leads they're generating are matching your expectations? And if they're not, are they open to pivoting to make sure that they shift the program to find the kinds of leads that you're really looking for or are showing the right types of qualifiers? Again, a real partner will do these things. They'll work with you collaboratively to find the best outcomes, whereas some other vendors will just go into a black box, come out the other side, and move on. And they're really in it just to get you a lead list, close the business, as opposed to really trying to drive pipeline and ensure you're getting the best quality. So those are all important things to be mindful of. Seems pretty obvious in hindsight, but again, many folks don't proactively think about these when working with different partners. I've got one more quick video to play for you here before we go into number 5. A good friend of mine, Amy Holtzman, she's a chief marketing officer at a company called Check. And she's been around the demand gen world for many years as a marketing leader at companies like Conductor and Marketo and others. And I was speaking with her at an event a couple months ago and asking her some of these same questions of like, what do you look for when you work with a lead gen provider? And I asked her a specific question, like, do you have any horror stories of working with a vendor that like really didn't work out? And she told me the story, and I said, wait a second, let me grab my camera because I want to record this. And she allowed me to and shared this video. So I want to just quickly play it for you to get a sense. Like, this is a real world marketer and an experience that they had, one of many. This is something that isn't just a one-time thing. So this is just a couple of minutes here, but check this out. It really shines a light on some of these things that we're talking about. So let me get that video up here for you. And here we go.
When I started at Check, we were running content syndication with a vendor that I will not name. And I asked them basic questions. Can you tell me how they're generating these leads and what property the leads are coming from? And I also asked if that vendor could send us an example of the creative that they were running for us. And I was actually shocked. They would not tell us where the leads were being generated from. They gave us a list of sites and newsletters that they could have been coming from, but not where the specific leads were generated from. And they also...
I'm just going to pause it there, folks. I see a comment that folks can't see the video. That's the case. Let me know in the chat if you were able to see the video. Apologies if that happened. And I actually have a backup plan here. 1 second. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, I'm going to play it from YouTube. Let's see if this one works.
When I started at Check, we were running content syndication with a vendor that I will not name, and I asked them basic questions. Can you tell me how they're generating these leads and what property the leads are coming from? And I also asked if that vendor could send us an example of the creative that they were running for us. And I was actually shocked. They would not tell us where the leads were being generated from. They gave us a list of sites and newsletters that they could have been coming from, but not where the specific leads were generated from. And they also wouldn't show us our ads in context. They just sent back the creative that we sent to them, and it was a huge red flag. The other thing that they did is they wouldn't even tell me if any of the leads were telemarketing leads. And I want my reps to know when they follow up on a lead, where did it come from? And did they press a button to download it? Did they click something in a newsletter to download it? Or did they receive a phone call and they accepted the asset? And this vendor that we were working with wouldn't even tell me if it was a digital lead or a telemarketing lead, which was a huge, huge red flag. Not super surprising. When those leads started getting sent over to our sales and BDR team, none of those leads remembered ever downloading our content.
All right. Spooky, right? I hope you appreciated my little horror story framing of that, because these are like lead gen horror stories that I'm sure many of us have. And it was funny when talking to Amy, I was like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe that happened. She's like, it happens all the time, Tyler. That's not the only vendor I've worked with like that. And so this really is something that is more and more common we're finding in the market as more and more vendors pop up who are simply buying freely available data and going out and running campaigns as database marketers. So hopefully that gave you some good perspective from a real marketing leader out there who has seen this stuff firsthand. All right, our last question that you want to ask a lead gen provider is to better understand the size and makeup of the company themselves. And this really kind of ties back to what Amy was just talking about. How reputable is this lead generation vendor that we are considering? Are they somebody that we are seeing out there in the market that has been in the market for a number of years? Or is it a relatively new entrant who, might just be using a few different pieces of tech to, again, aggregate lists, grab some intent data, and pass things off as qualified leads? So you want to think about, when was it founded? What does its employee base look like? You can actually use tools like LinkedIn Premium to better understand what their employee makeup is in the company. Sometimes you'll find one that has 60% of their staff is in sales, and they're only a 20-person company. That to me is a big red flag, which means they're not investing in these other things to build an audience and to really run full stack marketing programs for their customers. You'll want to look at who the founders are, the executive team, right? Again, are these people who have been in the market, who understand the nuances of this? Do they come from backgrounds in publishing, marketing, media, and so on? And again, really also understanding, do they have a editorial staff? In the case of Technology Advice, I was honestly pleasantly surprised to learn that we have over 150 people in our editorial and audience development team. And those are folks who are writing, researching, they're producing video content for our media sites, newsletters, social media channels. This is a huge team of folks who are building audiences and building relationships. And so that gives them a trusted community to be able to then run lead gen programs into. But that wouldn't be possible if they didn't have a large editorial team who was actively building that audience and creating that trust that's so important. So really digging into this, like anything, this type of due diligence can be difficult to do. And it can be awkward to ask a vendor, like, tell me more about your CEO, or, how many people do you have in sales? But I encourage you to use tools at your disposal to learn a little bit about that. Don't be shy to ask some of those questions. And if you do see anything that looks like a little bit of a red flag, again, start pulling on it and just see to make sure that you're comfortable with, is this the kind of vendor we really want to work with? If it is a small company with not much of a reputation, who's maybe just doing email blasts with your content, sometimes not only can those programs not work, but they can also have a negative impact. They can have a negative brand association come along with them. And that could really have can create a problem for you, where vendor or potential customers are seeing your content being pushed by an unreputable source, and it can actually leave a bad taste in their mouth and ultimately lead to a lack of brand trust. So hopefully that was insightful. I know I packed a lot in there, but I wanted to make sure you had a sense and also a reframing of, why do we work with lead gen vendors in the first place? Again, what are we really looking for from them? What's the art of the possible in terms of the types of programs we can be running? But then being really smart about, how do I figure out who's who in this world of lead generation? There are literally hundreds of companies out there offering everything from lead lists to high intent, high quality lead gen programs to audience driven demand gen and brand demand programs. So these questions are going to help you learn a little bit more beyond just what they say on their website about how these companies work, what to expect from them, and what kind of quality you can really expect to gain from the different types of programs that you run. Now, in the handout section, should be somewhere, I think in the bottom left of your screen, there's a button for handouts, and you'll see we actually put together a PDF checklist called 25 plus questions to ask your next lead gen provider. You can download that straight from here. Please grab it. And it goes, a lot deeper than the 5 umbrellas that I had here, but gives a lot of very specific questions that you can arm yourself or people on your team with. Again, if you do have junior folks on your team who are evaluating vendors, this can be a great resource for them to get them thinking more strategically about, what questions do I need to ask when vetting a new lead gen partner. So please feel free to grab that from the handouts tab, and hope that that's helpful for you as a takeaway. Before we hop into questions, if anybody does have any, I did want to emphasize that here at Technology Advice, I'm super proud to be a part of this team. We are an amazing B2B media publisher and a demand generation and digital marketing partner for companies across the B2B tech media landscape. Again, I've learned a lot about what makes this organization such a great partner to its customers, investing in global audiences, investing in multiple channels to reach those audiences, and then really being a trusted partner to their customers to ensure when we do run programs that we're thinking about the revenue outcomes and not just getting customers lead lists. So, I think we have great answers to all the questions we asked here, and I'm very proud to be a part of the team. And so if you are interested in learning more about Technology Advice and how we help companies not only generate leads, but also build demand and create long-term pipeline, you know where to find us, or please feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. So with that, I want to say a huge thank you for joining me through here in today's session. Thanks for being active in the chat. And I wanted to turn it over to see if anybody out there has questions about what we presented here today. Any comments, maybe their own horror story they want to add in the chat. I will take a look in the Q&A here. Please drop it in the Q&A if there's a specific question you have that you would like to see answered. Otherwise, I'll do a quick scoot through the chat here to see if I missed anything. I don't think so. So if there is anything that you'd like to get answered now, please drop it into the Q&A. Otherwise, please feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn. Again, Tyler Lessard. Toss me a question. I'm happy to help answer it, and we can pick it up from there. So with that, I do want to say, again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Keep an eye out for the recording, and feel free to share that with anybody else on your team that you think might find this helpful. Grab that handout of the 25 question checklist. And it also has a link out to a scorecard that you can use when evaluating your next vendor. So again, hopefully you find that to be helpful. Thanks again for joining us here today. And with that, we will wrap things up, and we hope to see you again on our future webinars, where we'll be sharing more and more insights on how to drive demand, how to work with different vendors, and what's going on in the ecosystem. So keep an eye out for further ones coming at you in the coming months. Thanks, everybody. Take care and have a great day.